The difficulties encountered by fishermen at sea, a multi-dimensional challenges of fishing, is an ancestral activity, essential to the economy, food security, and culture of many coastal communities around the world. However, sea fishermen face a multitude of difficulties that make this profession both dangerous, economically unstable, and socially marginalized. These challenges encompass environmental, economic, social, regulatory, and technological aspects, exacerbated by modern dynamics such as climate change, overfishing, and global competition. This 1,600-word essay explores these difficulties in depth, based on recent data and testimonies from fishermen, to offer a complete vision of this demanding profession. 1. Physical dangers and safety risks. Profession of sea fishermen is one of the most dangerous in the world, according to the International Labour Organization, ILO, which estimates that fishing accounts for about 24,000 deaths per year, a mortality rate 50 times higher than the average for other professions. Working conditions at sea are unpredictable and often extreme. Extreme weather conditions, sudden storms, giant waves sometimes up to 10 meters in the North Atlantic, and strong winds constantly threaten the crews. In 2023, a storm off the coast of Senegal caused the loss of 17 artisanal fishermen in a single day, according to a report by the NGO Greenpeace. Artisanal fishermen, often equipped with fragile canoes, are particularly vulnerable to these climatic vagaries. Accidents on board, heavy nets, defective winches, and slippery boat surfaces cause serious injuries, fractures, amputations, or falls overboard. In 2022, the FAO Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations reported that 60% of fatal accidents at sea were related to poorly maintained equipment or a lack of training. Isolation and fatigue. Long periods at sea, sometimes weeks, lead to chronic fatigue, increasing the risk of human errors. Artisanal fishermen in West Africa, for example, often spend 10 to 15 hours a day rowing or handling nets without adequate rest, which leads to preventable accidents. Lack of safety. Many artisanal boats, especially in Africa and Southeast Asia, do not have life jackets, distress beacons, or radios. A 2024 study in the Gulf of Guinea revealed that only 20% of the canoes were equipped with basic safety equipment, making fatal shipwrecks frequent. These physical dangers are aggravated by climate change, which intensifies the frequency and violence of storms, making navigation even more perilous. 2. Economic challenges. A precarious profession of fishing. Although essential to the world economy, maritime fishing represents 90 million tons of fish per year. According to the FAO, is often unprofitable for fishermen, especially artisans. Overfishing and stock depletion. Overfishing, fueled by industrial fleets, has reduced fish stocks by 33% since the 1970s. In West Africa, species such as the Theof grouper have seen their populations fall by 80% in 30 years, forcing fishermen to sail further up to 100 kilometers from the coast for leaner catches, increasing fuel and time costs. Competition with industrial fleets. Industrial trawlers, often foreign, Chinese, European, catch massive quantities of fish, leaving little for artisanal fishermen. In 2023, a report by the Environmental Justice Foundation denounced the presence of 300 illegal Chinese vessels off the coast of Ghana, looting local resources and reducing the income of fishermen by 40%. Price fluctuations. Fish prices vary greatly depending on the global supply and intermediaries. Lack of access to finance. Artisanal fishermen are struggling to obtain loans to modernize their boats or buy more efficient engines. A World Bank study 2022 shows that 70% of fishermen in sub-Saharan Africa do not have access to microloans, locking them in a cycle of poverty. Impact of foreign subsidies. The massive subsidies granted to industrial fleets, $35 billion per year, according to the OECD, distort the market, making artisanal fishermen less competitive. In Mauritania, local fishermen report a 50% decrease in their income since the arrival of subsidized European fleets. These economic pressures are pushing many fishermen to abandon their profession or migrate to Europe, often via dangerous routes such as the Mediterranean. 3. Environmental challenges. An ecosystem in crisis. Climate change and the degradation of marine ecosystems aggravate the difficulties of fishermen, transforming their working environment into a hostile space, Acidification and pollution. Ocean acidification due to CO2 absorption is killing coral reefs, key habitats for 25% of marine species. In Tanzania, fishermen on the coast of Zanzibar report a 60% decrease in coral fish catches since 2010. Plastic pollution, 8 million tons per year in the oceans, also damages the nets and kills the fish. Sea level rise. Coastal areas, where 90% of artisanal fishermen live, are threatened by erosion and flooding. In 2024, fishing villages in Senegal were swallowed up, displacing 2,000 families. Illegal, unreported, and unregulated IUU fishing, representing 20% of global catches, 26 million tons, depletes resources. In West Africa, it costs local economies $2.3 billion a year, according to the FAO, directly affecting artisanal fishermen. These environmental factors reduce yields, increase risks, and threaten the long-term viability of the fishery. 4. Regulatory constraints and political regulations, although necessary to protect marine resources, often create obstacles for artisanal fishermen. Restrictive quotas, fishing quotas, imposed to combat overfishing, limit the catches of small fishermen, but are often poorly applied to industrial fleets. In Namibia, artisanal fishermen had their quotas reduced by 50% in 2023, while foreign trawlers continued to operate. Limited access to fishing areas. Marine Protected Areas, MPA, covering 8% of the oceans in 2025, restrict the access of artisanal fishermen to traditional areas. In Kenya, the Malindi MPA has reduced fishing areas by 30%, forcing fishermen to sail further. Corruption and bureaucracy. In countries such as Nigeria, fishermen must pay informal taxes to port authorities to access the sea, representing up to 20% of their income, according to a 2023 report by Transparency International. Lack of representation. Artisanal fishermen's associations are often ignored in international negotiations, such as those of the World Trade Organization, WTO, on fisheries subsidies. In 2022, only 10% of African delegates to the WTO represented artisanal fishermen. These regulatory constraints, combined with a lack of political support, marginalize artisanal fishermen in front of large companies. 5. Social and cultural challenge. Fishermen at sea also face social challenges that affect their quality of life and their status in society. Social marginalization. In many communities, fishermen are perceived as low-level workers despite their food contribution, 15% of the world's. Proteins come from fishing. In Ghana, fishermen report being stigmatized as their children have less access to education. Forced migration. The scarcity of fish pushes young fishermen to migrate. In 2024, 10,000 Senegalese fishermen tried to cross to Europe, according to the IOM, with a mortality rate of 20% on these routes. Precarious living conditions. Fishermen often live in coastal villages without access to drinking water, electricity, or medical care. A 2023 study in Sierra Leone shows that 80% of fishermen do not have health insurance. Impact on families. Long absences at sea, sometimes 3 months for industrial fishermen, weaken family ties. In Senegal, fishermen's wives report a divorce rate of 30% linked to these prolonged absences. 6. Technological and adaptation challenges. Lack of access to modern technology limits the competitiveness and safety of artisanal fishermen. Outdated equipment. In East Africa, 70% of artisanal boats use outboard motors from the 1980s, expensive in fuel and prone to breakdowns. Modern, more efficient nets cost up to €500, inaccessible for the most part. Lack of training. Fishermen lack training on technologies such as GPS or sonars, which could improve their catches. In 2022, only 15% of Tanzanian fishermen had access to technological training, according to the FAO. Transition to aquaculture. While aquaculture fish farming represents 50% of global fish production, artisanal fishermen are struggling to adapt due to lack of capital or land. Solutions and Perspectives Fest with these challenges. Solutions are emerging, strengthening security. Programs such as those of the ILO distribute life jackets and beacons in West Africa, reducing deaths by 15% since 2020. Fishermen's cooperatives in Senegal. Cooperatives have increased incomes by 25% by eliminating intermediaries. Fight against IUU fishing. Satellites and drones are used to monitor illegal vessels, as in Ghana, where 50 vessels were boarded in 2023. Education and diversification. NGOs train fishermen in aquaculture and ecotourism, as in Zanzibar, where 500 fishermen have created tourist circuits. Conclusion: offshore fishermen face a cocktail of physical dangers, economic pressures, environmental challenges, regulatory constraints, and social marginalization. Their profession, vital to feed millions of people, is threatened by global dynamics such as overfishing and climate change, but also by a lack of local support. Yet their resilience and emerging initiatives offer hope. By supporting fishermen through fair policies, accessible technologies, and better protection, it is possible to preserve this ancestral profession while ensuring its sustainability. If you want to go deeper into a specific aspect such as climate impacts or local solutions, let me know.